Hey everybody, Derek here from Bomb Socks with another day of Bomb Bites, where we feast upon the words of Christ and we do it one bite at a time. So today's message, I want to show you just a little bit about where Jacob had his name changed to Israel. It's in chapter 32. This is where we first understand the name Israel. It's kind of a weird story. The chapter heading simply says, Jacob sees angels. He asks God to preserve him from Esau. You remember back early on, Jacob basically is told to leave because Esau wants to kill him. So he prepares presents for him. I love the idea of a little bribery. Hey, brother, I know it's been a long time. Here's some presents for you. He wrestles all night with a messenger of God, and Jacob's name is changed to Israel, and he sees God face to face. Well, in this story, again, it's kind of a bizarre story, but I love the way the Come Follow Me does this. It actually doesn't do it in this week's lessons. If you go back, it actually has, periodically, the Come Follow Me manual will do these things called Thoughts to Keep in Mind, which are wonderful things as you are studying the Old Testament, just things to keep in mind. And one of them is simply called the house of Israel. So it says, somewhere in the wilderness east of Canaan, Jacob nervously awaited an encounter with his twin brother Esau. The last time Jacob had seen Esau, about 20 years earlier, Esau was threatening to kill him. Jacob had spent all night wrestling in the wilderness, seeking a blessing from God. As a result of Jacob's faith, persistence, and determination, God had answered his prayers. That night, Jacob's name was changed to Israel, a name that means he perseveres with God. In fact, President Nelson, you remember Russell M. Nelson talked about how he did an intensive study over many, many years about Israel. And as he'd studied and consulted with some Hebrew scholars, he said that one of the definitions was let God prevail. In fact, it talks about that a little bit in chapter 32 and verse 28. And he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel, for as a prince thou hast power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. So that's where you've got the let God prevail idea. So back to the Come Follow Me. This is the first time that the name Israel appears in the Bible, and it's a name that perseveres throughout the book and throughout history. The name soon came to refer to more than just one man. Israel had 12 sons, as we talked about earlier this week, and their descendants were collectively known as the house of Israel, the tribes of Israel, the children of Israel, or the Israelites. One of my favorite things I like to do whenever I'm talking to a group about Israel, I always say, raise your hand if you're of the house of Israel. And surprisingly, not every hand goes up. And I just ask the question, how do you know if you are of the house of Israel? And most of the responses come from patriarchal blessings. Now, in this manual, it says, in the church today, you may hear about Israel in expressions like the gathering of Israel. We sing about the Redeemer of Israel and the hope of Israel and the elders of Israel. Again, President Nelson has talked so much about this gathering. That's one of his main focuses. In these cases, we aren't talking or singing only about the ancient kingdom of Israel or the modern nation called Israel. Rather, we are referring to those who have been gathered from the nations of the world into the church of Jesus Christ. We are referring to people who persevere with God, who earnestly seek his blessings, and who through baptism have become his covenant people. Your patriarchal blessing declares your connection to one of the tribes of the house of Israel. That's more than just an interesting piece of family history information. I love that. Being a part of the house of Israel means that you have a covenant relationship with Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ. It means that you, like Abraham, are meant to be a blessing to God's children. We talked about that earlier. It means, in the words of Peter, that you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood and holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should shew forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. It means that you are one who perseveres with God as you honor your covenants with him. Will you please keep that in mind? Again, this is thoughts to keep in mind. So please keep in mind as you're studying through the Old Testament that you are of the house of Israel. This covenant that started with Abraham, really it started with Adam, but it has continued on. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob's name is changed to Israel. Those 12 sons or 12 tribes is where you start finding us, and you start finding every one of us. And we are those, as it says, the soldiers who prevail with God. And as we let God prevail and persevere through these crazy difficult times, we're going to see the hand of the Lord in our lives, and other people need to see that. So not only do we get blessed for it, but we get the privilege and the honor to go out and gather and help other people understand that they also can persevere through the difficulties of life. That's why we're here. That's why we've been put on this earth, and I am grateful to have that knowledge. Let's share that knowledge with other people and spread the goodness of the gospel to help everybody else know that they can gather and persevere. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and thanks for sharing these messages. We love, as always, that you do that. Please go check out our amazingly comfortable gospel-themed socks at bombsocks.com. And you guys have a great day. Godspeed. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.